It's time to end the launch lineup with our last game, which is a space railroad shooter that is game number 10, Total Eclipse Turbo, which is a port to the original 3DO version and, believe it or not, was the first North American game released before the system was launched in 1995. So why isn't this game number 1? Well, despite this game not being the first game ever made for the system, it was Ridge Racer, which I considered it to be the first one, since it was a major title for the US. But also, the system didn't come out yet, so you are stuck with this game, but didn't have the console yet, until 11 days later. Yeah. But back to topic. Published and developed by Crystal Dynamics. The story is about the Earth being attacked by an aggressive alien race known as the Draxi. The aliens use their powerful weapon, the Sun Dagger, to initiate a supernova in the sun. Now it's up to you as the player to pilot the ship across the 4 planets and ultimately destroy the Sun Dagger and to prevent further destruction. The origins of the game were all the way back when the 3DO was first released. Since the system was trying to be a 32-bit and focused on 3D gaming at the time, 3DO hired some gaming studios like Electronic Arts, Strategic Designs, Interplay, Origin Systems, Game Tech, and of course Crystal Dynamics, which played a huge role for the system. They made such classics for the system like Crash and Burn, Off-World Interceptor, The Horde, Gex, and their most famous one, Total Eclipse, which was supposed to be a killer app for the system. Heck, there's even a tech demo of the game that was from Crash and Burn. The original soundtrack was composed by Brooke Trishman, which he did a fantastic job on the score. But more on that later in the review part. And it was produced, by which he was the head of the production of the 3DO company at the same time. When it was released for the 3DO in August 29, 1994, it gained some positive reception, but was mixed by critics. Electronic Gaming Monthly said they highly praised the graphics, but criticized that the controls are too sensitive, the music is inappropriate for the theme of the stages, and that the hit detection was overly punishing. And GamePro had something similar but in a positive note, and said Total Eclipse blasts off into a familiar fighting spaceways, but the graphic look of this cool shooter is truly out of this world. Even though it was a success, but didn't live up to the hype for the system. Due to the system failures, most of the 3DO games that were made by Crystal Dynamics were ported to other systems, especially the PlayStation, since it was a huge success in Japan, and their first game that was ported is, of course, Total Eclipse. But for some strange reason, they decided to put one more word in the title, and that's Turbo, calling by their new name Total Eclipse Turbo. Even though it was the exact same game, but with better graphics and smooth frame rate. So why did they put Turbo in it? No idea whatsoever. When the PS1 version was released in North America in August 29, 1995, or September 9, 1995, even though the console didn't came out yet, Japan in October 13, 1995, and Europe in November 1, 1995, it had the same positive reviews as the 3DO version, but was less praised than the other version. The reviewers for the PlayStation version were less positive, as critics commented that despite the turbo in the title, the PlayStation version made almost no changes to the by then over a year-old game, and Bob Mackey of US Gamer listed Total Eclipse Turbo as one of the worst launch games for the PlayStation. Despite the criticism and backlash of the PS1 port, it still managed to receive a sequel called Solar Eclipse, which was released for the Sega Saturn and PlayStation, but we only got the Saturn version in the US, but not the PS1 version, which was only released in Europe and was renamed to Titan Wars. After that, the series never continued on afterwards and was completely forgotten by time, which is just a shame. And now, for the review aspect. The graphics looks alright and does have the 3D capability to it since it was a 3DO port. The presentation is nice and well done, with the live action cutscenes, but the acting is okay. The music is surprisingly excellent and kicks ass at the same time. They didn't have to put in this much effort on the soundtrack, but no, they easily put it as much effort than the actual development of the game. Seriously, this kind of music should be used in a rave party. It's that good. I thank Brook for making a kick-ass soundtrack. You deserve it. And lastly, the gameplay. Even though the game plays alright and the controls feels responsive and well executed, and also a life bar that could easily bring back up by killing enemies and so many power-ups to collect, but the only problem I had with are the levels. Even though I said the graphics looked alright, but it gets repetitive over time. Like, there are only 2 level sections. One is the outside levels, and the other one being the tunnel levels. Most levels have both of them, while the other levels have only one entirely. Sure, they do change up the textures and making them different, but it's still the exact same thing. But the only difference are the harder obstacles and lots of enemies. Luckily, there is a boss at the end of the world, and this is the only exciting part of the game, because they have some sort of a strategy to beat the boss. But with that, the game becomes more difficult, one of them being the last level that you must get through a maze path, but be careful. One wrong path and it's a dead end, and you can't go back, meaning you will have to die and have to start all over again. With that said, it's at least decent, but gets repetitive at the same time. And finally, the conclusion. The game does have its charm, like the presentation, graphics, and one hell of a kick-ass soundtrack. But the gameplay aspect just felt boring, and mostly difficult during the last parts of the game. Overall, the game just didn't age well because of the gameplay. If they could have spent more time on it, it could have been easily a 4 or a 5, but since it was focused more on the 3D graphics back when it was developed for the 3DO, it just felt flat and overall just decent at best. Not to say it's not bad, but could have been at least amazing. But oh well then. I give my official rating a 3 out of 6. And that's the first 10 games completed for the launch lineup. Vastly to say that the games back when the system was released was surprisingly good, but not as best from the SNES or Dreamcast launch lineup, but it's close to being at number 3 of the best launch games for the system. Even though there were some games that failed to lead expectation, but there were some games that did exceed and would become remembered after the launch and as part of gaming history. So overall, not a bad start to the PlayStation in North America. So with that said, here is the worst to best of all the launch titles. Here we go. Number 10, Worst Power Surf 3D Tennis. Number 9, Kilik the DNA Imperative. Number 8, Total Eclipse Turbo. Number 7, Battle Arena Toshinden. Number 6, Street Fighter the Movie. Number 5, ESPN Extreme Games. Number 4, NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Number 3, The Raiden Project. Number 2, Rayman. And finally, number 1, Best Ridge Racer. You may think it's all over, right? Oh, no, we're just getting started. And just scraping off the surface. Even with the launch lineup games being done, we still have 40 more titles to go. Since I am reviewing every single PlayStation game from 1995 in North America, starting with our next game being that it was the same company who made Ridge Racer and was based on a flight combat game from the arcades. What is that game? Well, I'll tell you in the next review. And also, if I made a mistake or forgot about something important from the first 10 reviews, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching.